Hi. So I was recently in the Netherlands visiting my boyfriend and his family. I was there for 3 weeks, and while I was there I acquired quite a few books, 27 to be exact. I got 27 books. I really tried to limit myself, believe it or not, because I was limited in my suitcase space, and I actually barely packed any clothes with me because I wanted space for books. One of the bookstores we went to was the American Book Center in Amsterdam, and that is now my favorite bookstore in the world. It was so hard to control myself when we were there. When I was walking through the store, I was carrying books in my arms like this, and my boyfriend was laughing at me. He was like, "You already have so many." And I had to keep going and putting books back and keep thinking, no, which one is more important, because I can't get them all. So yeah. And I even got this cute tote bag. Look at this. They gave me this for free because I spent so much money on books. So oh, there's cat hair on it. Look how cute this is. This is so cute. And then it says book lover on this side. I'm really looking forward to going back there the next time I visit and hopefully getting even more books. I really love the American Book Center. So yeah, I thought that I would show you the books I got. Yeah. The ones I've already read I can give you my thoughts on briefly, but some of them I haven't gotten around to reading yet. I have quite a stack of books next to me. We're gonna start with Howl's Moving Castle. I've seen the movie many times and I really like the movie, but I've never read the book that it's based on. So when I saw this, I really wanted to get it. And I still haven't read it, but I will soon, and I'm very excited to. And then next we have Bunny, which is a very talked about book in the Bookstagram, Booktube, Book Talk community. So I'm sure you've heard of this book already, and a lot of people really love it, and a lot of people don't really like it, and they're kind of confused by it. I'm kind of in between on this book. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I thought it was enjoyable, but definitely a weird one. Kind of in between for me. And then next we have Eileen by Otessa Moshfegh. I've read most of her other books. I generally enjoy her writing. I don't think it was incredible. The ending was a bit lacking for me, but overall it was pretty good. Then I got Defy the Night by Bridget Kemmerer. I read some of her other books. I read the Cursebreaker trilogy. Is that what it's called? I think that's what it's called. I read those books and enjoyed them, so I got this one. I don't think her writing style is amazing, so I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this book yet. I've heard mixed things. I think it's about a plague or distributing medicine or something like that, so a lot of people were commenting on it during COVID times that it was kind of relevant. I think it's pretty new. So yeah, I haven't read this yet, but I will give you my thoughts on it when I do. Then we have one I'm really excited to read. I've been hearing about this book for years. I've had it recommended to me many times, and I don't know why I haven't read it yet. I have no good reason to. It is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. So from what I've heard about this book, it is apparently about kind of villainous, bad characters, and people say that he writes characters really well. So I'm very excited to read this. Then we have The Absolute Book by Elizabeth Knox. I had not heard of this book when I got it. It was an impulse buy. I saw it on the shelf, and the cover, it says "A book, a murder, a library with an ancient secret," and that drew me in. I really like when books mention libraries and when there's like secret libraries, magic libraries, stuff like that. So a library with an ancient secret I am definitely intrigued. I have not read this yet, but I am excited to. Then we have another new author for me. This is the Deathless Girls. This was also an impulse purchase because the cover is just beautiful. I'm one of those people who judge books by their cover. If I really hate the cover of a book, then it's harder for me to buy it. Then I really need to have an incentive to buy it. And if I love the cover, then I am very drawn to it regardless of the story sometimes. I have never read anything by this author before. I don't know if she has written anything else. Oh, she has. Okay. I started reading this a couple months ago and I got a little bit into it. It didn't really capture me, the story. I am planning on finishing this book because I want to see how it ends. It gets into the action of the story pretty quickly, but sort of the main plot of the book had just begun when I stopped reading, so I am planning on finishing this book at some point. And then we have A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I have read some of her other books and I really enjoy her writing style. I have not read this yet, but I am very excited to. This is a trilogy, right? I think this is a trilogy, but I am excited to start reading this. I say that about every book I haven't read, but I am very excited. Then we have another V.E. Schwab book. This is Gallant, and this was a new release. I did read this when I was in the Netherlands. I finished it in a couple of days. It was one of those books that really pulled me into the story. And it was a really nice experience reading this. I liked the characters, I liked the setting. I started reading it on the train and I read a few pages and then I instantly had that feeling when you just know that you're gonna love this book. So I really, really liked this one. It is about a 16-year-old girl. She is mute and she's an orphan. And she's living at this orphanage and her life seems pretty bleak. And then she gets a mysterious letter from an uncle telling her to come to his estate. And his estate is this mansion. It is kind of like a ghost story. It is a little bit spooky. And it's a good read for the autumn and winter season, I think. So if you're looking for kind of a spooky but also kind of a nice story, I would recommend this one. And then we have more V.E. Schwab. I got this really pretty box set of the Villains duology, which is Vicious and Vengeful, and I have not read either of these books yet either, but I am very excited to. I've been hearing about these books since they came out and people keep recommending them. And as I mentioned, I really like her writing style. The only thing I know about this duology so far is that it's about magic and there's two wizards or boys with, or men, I don't know how old they are, who have magical powers or supernatural abilities, something like that, and they're competing or fighting each other. I don't know. I've heard people talk about these books and they always seem really exciting. It seems like an exciting story. So that's why I got these and I'm very excited to start reading these. Next we have the book that I am most excited to talk about. This is In the Garden of Spite by Camilla Bruce. She is a Norwegian author, which I thought was pretty cool. I'm Norwegian, I live in Norway, and this was the first book I read by her, and I really enjoyed her writing style. I think she has a very unique voice and a unique way of writing. I have since read another one of her books, You Let Me In, which I really, really enjoyed. I think it's one of my favorites this year, as is this one. And she has another book set to come out later this year that I'm also very excited to read. So this book, this is about the Norwegian-born female serial killer, best known as Belle Gunness, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard about. She killed a lot of people, including probably her own children. She was definitely a pretty fucked up person. She was born in Norway and she emigrated to the United States in the late 1800s. And this story is written from her perspective, and the author sort of gets inside her mind. I mean, a lot of this is speculative and we can never know a lot of things for sure, but it feels like getting a glimpse inside her mind. And you also get all the details of what happened. So if you are interested in true crime and in the story of this, then you definitely get all of that. And some insight into why she could have possibly turned out the way she did. And it's very interesting. It is definitely one of my favorite books that I read this year. So highly recommend this one, and I really enjoyed it. Then we have another book that I have not read yet, this one, The Whistling. And this is another one that I was drawn to from the cover because it looked kind of spooky. It's set in the 1800s and it takes place on a remote Scottish island. And those things really speak to me. So I'm very excited to read a story set in the 1800s on a remote Scottish island. On the back it says, "Is this house haunted by the ghosts of the past or the secrets of the living?" And I think that sounds pretty spooky and interesting. I think this is going to be a good read for this autumn season. Then I got Verity by Colleen Hoover. This book is very popular on Book Talk. There's been a lot of talk about this book. I knew from the start that I didn't really like it. I've never read anything by Colleen Hoover before, and I don't think I will read anything else by her. I don't like her writing style. It feels unpolished, and at times I was a little bit like, you're a published author with editors and someone should have maybe had some notes for this, or, you know. I don't think she's a very good author based on the impression that I got from this book. But I was intrigued enough by the story that I read this in one sitting because I really wanted to see what would happen. I just wanted to know what the ending was going to be like. I have no doubt that this is going to be turned into a movie eventually. It just seems, it reads like a movie. Like you can almost guess what's going to happen, and I'm sure a lot of people guessed the twists and stuff. And when you get to the end, you're just like, oh, okay. I don't know. I was annoyed by this book, but it's still, the story still intrigued me. But would I recommend it? No. And the next book I got is a nonfiction book with the stickers still on it that I didn't take off yet. This is Invisible Women. I have not read this yet, but I have heard a lot of people talk about it on TikTok, and it seems intriguing, it seems depressing, it seems like an important book. I think this is an important book. On the back it says, "Imagine a world where your phone is too big for your hand. Your doctor prescribes a drug that is wrong for your body. In a car accident, you are 47% more likely to be seriously injured. If any of this sounds familiar, chances are that you're a woman." And that kind of sums up what this book is about. Issues faced by women because the world is built for and by men. Most scientific studies is done on white males. For some reason, most studies are done on white males, and they don't represent the entire population. So then that can have consequences for women and for other parts of the population because things aren't designed for them, things aren't made for them. So this book says that it brings together a range of case studies, stories, and new research from across the world that illustrate the hidden ways in which women are forgotten and the profound impact this has on us all. So I think this seems like a very important book that probably most people should read. My cats are being really noisy. Okay, so next we have A Room Called Earth by Madeline Ryan. This is a book that I fully judged on the cover. I was in a bookstore and I instantly felt drawn to this book. So I picked this book up and I started reading the back, and after 2 sentences, I was immediately like, yes, I'm getting this book. This is what hooked me. It says, a young woman gets ready to go to a party. She arrives, feels overwhelmed, leaves, and then returns. But the she goes to a party, feels overwhelmed, and leaves part, I was instantly like, yes, I'm getting this book. What I didn't know, it says on the cover, but I only read those sentences and then I was like, yeah, I'm getting this book. So I didn't continue reading. But what I didn't know was that this book is written by an autistic author, and I'm getting the impression that it's written about herself, that she's writing about herself, or that the character is heavily inspired by her own personality. As an autistic person, I can very much relate to a lot of things that are described in this book, but there are also things that I couldn't relate to at all. There were times that I found the main character of this book to be annoying and preachy and judgmental, and there is quite a lot of pseudoscience in this book. I mean, it's fiction, it's not claiming to be nonfiction, but those parts kind of annoyed me a little. So I think this ended up being a 3-star read for me, but it was an enjoyable book, so I do like this. The most positive thing I got out of this book was that it made me appreciate my surroundings and my sensory experiences a little more. At least for a while it had that effect on me, and I really like that. So yeah. Then we have a few nonfiction books. I got this one, Notes from Deep Time. I have not read this book yet, but I think it's about the geological history of the Earth, and this seems very interesting to me, so I'm definitely excited to read this. I am not an expert in geology at all, but I find it a very fascinating subject, so I'm sure I'm gonna like this book. Then we have this one, which is another one that the cover, I saw the cover across the bookstore and it just instantly drew me to this book, and it is called Sentient: What Animals Reveal About Our Senses. I have not read this yet, but it seems like it includes a lot of interesting animal facts, which I am always up for, and it is about animal senses and human senses. And it seems like a really interesting book, so I'm excited about this one. Then we have another sort of Earth history type book. This is Otherlands, A World in the Making. This is written by a paleobiologist. It says that it is an epic, exhilarating journey into deep time, showing us the Earth as it used to exist, the worlds that were here before ours. To read Otherlands is to see the last 500 million years not as an endless expanse of unfathomable time, but as a series of worlds simultaneously fabulous and familiar. And that is very compelling to me. That's very interesting. I find Earth history and the evolution of the Earth to be incredibly fascinating. So I'm very excited to read this one. I know I say that about every book, that I'm very excited to read it, but I really am. And then the last of the science nonfiction books is this one, Gathering Moss. I have read this one already. It's a pretty skinny book. This is also definitely one of my favorite books this year. It is written by a bryologist, which is someone who studies mosses. And this book is about moss, but it's also about so much more. I love writing that blends science with passion and inspiration, scientists who are really passionate about their work, and it shows. And this is that kind of book. Also, just as a little side note, I first heard about this book on the podcast Ologies, which is one of my favorite podcasts. we went to this little used bookstore that sold exclusively sci-fi and horror type books, and that was really cool, and I really had to control myself in there. I was really struggling because I knew that I was limited in my suitcase space, and I had already gotten so many books, and there were so many books I wanted to get. So I got these volume 1 and 2 Galactic Empires, and they say that they are a collection of stories by different science fiction authors. I've not yet read any of these, but I have read other things by some of these authors, like Isaac Asimov, and I'm definitely very intrigued. I think these books are from the mid-70s or something like that. You can definitely tell how old they are, and they have that old book smell that a lot of people love. I feel like that's a smell you either love or hate. So yeah, these are just sci-fi story collections. I really enjoy science fiction in general, but especially the older style of science fiction writing and movies where it's like kind of kitschy, kind of campy. I really enjoy those types of stories. So yeah, I'm excited about these ones. And then I got one that I've never heard of before, which is this one, Wheelers. A novel of first contact and Earth's possible destruction. I couldn't find this book on Goodreads. Does this book exist? I don't know. Oh, it was previously owned by Ivo Tops? Is that a person or is that I don't know. That was the previous owner, apparently. This book isn't even that old. This book is from 2001. I thought it was a lot older than that. I just got the impression that it was older based on the cover. I have not yet read this book, but the cover intrigued me. It is about someone finding some kind of old artifacts on Callisto, one of Jupiter's moons, and I just find the premise of this book to be exciting. I have not read this, but I will hopefully get around to it soon. Then I got these 3 collection type books from the same used bookstore. All of these say the year's best fantasy and horror collection, and this one is the 17th and it's the 14th and 15th. So these are all collections of stories by well-known fantasy and horror writers. And as someone who is very into both fantasy and horror, I didn't feel like I could pass these books up. So they are pretty heavy, and this this definitely took up a lot of room in my suitcase, but I think it was worth it. Oh, this one has a special section on anime and manga. I didn't even see that. But yeah, these look really interesting. I have yet to read any of these, but they definitely intrigue me. I wanted to see when they were from. It seems they're from the early 2000s. Yeah, those definitely seem interesting. And then we have the last book, which I have also not read yet, but I've heard a lot of good things about this book, and it is Six Crimson Cranes. I've been hearing about this book since it came out. A lot of people on Book talk about this book a lot. And I have read the original story that this is based on, so I am familiar with the story, sort of, but not this. This is supposedly an original take on the story. This is the only hardcover book I got during my trip. I tried not to get hardcover books because they are heavier and they're not as bendable. So I figured with my limited suitcase space, I didn't want to use up the space on hard, heavy books. I instead wanted to get sort of bendy paperback books. But I saw this one on the shelf and it was on sale, and this edition is so beautiful, so I had to pick it up. I'm also very excited to read this one. And yeah, those were all the books I got. If you have read any of these books, if you have any thoughts on them, or if you want to read any of these books, please let me know your thoughts on them. And yeah, that's it. How do you end a YouTube video? Do you just say bye?